What is the weirdest thing you found underground? Was it as weird as a buried Ferrari, a Viking ship, or even a working cinema? Today we'll be looking at the 10 strangest things found underground. Imagine finding a dino under your backyard. And I'm not talking about a dinosaur, but a Ferrari Dino sports car. In Los Angeles, a young boy and his friends were digging in a backyard when their shovels hit something solid. At first, it felt like scrap metal, buried deeper than it should have been. But digging further, the shape became clear. It was a car, and not just any car, a Ferrari Dino 246 GTS. The car had been buried under dirt, plastic sheets, blankets, and towels, like someone was trying to hide it. Unfortunately, they forgot to close the door, which allowed dirt and moisture inside and badly damaged the interior. The landlord was shocked and immediately called the police, since he had no idea who the car belonged to or how it ended up underground. After an investigation, police identified it as a 1974 Ferrari that had been reported stolen 4 years earlier. The people currently living on the property had only moved in a few months before the discovery, and none of the neighbors remembered ever seeing a car being buried in the yard. At the time, the story confused and amused the public. As strange as it sounded, the truth was even stranger. The owner, Rosendo Cruz, had bought the Ferrari as an anniversary gift for his wife. It disappeared one night while they were out to dinner. Later, police learned the theft had been staged as part of an insurance scam. The plan was simple: hide the car, report it stolen, collect the insurance money, and deal with the car later. Instead, the Ferrari stayed underground long enough for people to forget it was ever there. Despite being buried for years, much of the car survived. After it was recovered, the car was returned to the insurance company that had paid for the loss and then resold it. The Dino was fully restored and eventually bought by Brad Howard, who still owns and drives it today, equipped with a new license plate that reads "Dug Up." What could a Viking ship possibly be doing underground? Also, I know you got excited the moment you heard the word Viking, and honestly, you can thank TV shows for that, because they burn the image of fierce Viking warriors deep into our imagination. When people talk about Viking discoveries, it is usually about weapons like daggers, axes, or knives pulled from the ground. But this story is not just about a blade, it is about an entire Viking ship, and what makes it even more surprising is where it was found. The place did not look special at all, just normal farmland in southeast Norway that had been used for centuries. There were no hills, no ruins, and nothing that would make you stop and look twice. When archaeologists arrived, they were not expecting much either, as their plan was simply to use ground-penetrating radar to scan the soil and see if anything had survived after so many years of farming. But just beneath the ground, only about 50 centimeters down, a long curved outline appeared. As the image became clearer, excitement spread through the team, because the curve was not random but familiar. It looked like a ship. Measurements showed it was nearly 20 meters long, or about 65 feet, which is massive for something hidden so close to the surface, and the ship had been resting there for more than 1,000 years. The burial mound that once covered it had been slowly flattened by farming long ago, leaving no visible sign above ground. This was not a shipwreck, but a burial meant to honor someone important. The scans also showed at least 8 other burial mounds around the ship, along with several longhouses nearby, including one nearly 45 meters long. Experts believe the ship was dragged inland from the Oslo fjord and used to bury a powerful Viking leader. In these burial rituals, the ship was never meant to sail again, as it served as a coffin meant to carry its owner into the afterlife rather than across the sea. At first, archaeologists hoped to dig the ship out completely, but after centuries underground, sudden exposure to air could cause the remaining wood to crumble almost instantly, turning it into dust. So instead of risking that loss, they chose to preserve it right where it was found. Even so, the discovery was remarkable, because the ship remained sealed for so long that parts of the keel and wooden planks survived. That survival alone was enough to confirm what the ship was and why it mattered. Local communities were stunned by the news, realizing that the quiet farmland they had walked across for generations had once been sacred ground. It was a place where Vikings buried their leaders and honored their dead, quietly suggesting that their ancestors may have been far more powerful than anyone ever imagined. It was a normal summer afternoon in 1978. Gary Johnson just came home from school and was walking the hillside behind his parents' house in Rancho Palos Verdes when he hit something with his foot and fell to the ground. At first, it looked like a large, dirty stone half buried in the dirt, but when he looked closer, he noticed long, unusual lines running across it. He called all his friends, and they dug around it by hand. They slowly unearthed the thing piece by piece using logs as rollers and levers. When they properly took out the whole object, they were not sure what the thing is. None of them had seen anything like it before. Later, they called the police, but the police were also unsure. So after them, researchers arrived, and they confirmed the fragments were parts of a baleen whale's jaw and skull. But how could a whale get all the way up there, so far from the sea? Well, the fossil was dated to about 16 million years old, from a time when the Los Angeles coastline was underwater. These whales are known as prehistoric whales, and they lived in the era of dinosaurs. All the pieces were embedded in a single slab weighing more than 450 kilograms. Baleen is soft tissue, which almost never fossilizes, and only about 20 similar fossils are known worldwide. Gary contacted a museum in the late 1970s, but no one had the money or equipment to move a fossil that heavy from a steep ravine. The slab was left near the base of the hill, just beyond a staircase behind the backyard, where it sat for 35 years. In 2014, after another whale fossil was discovered nearby, the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles agreed to recover it. A 10-person county search and rescue team spent 4 hours hauling the fossil up a 25-degree slope using ropes, pulleys, and a heavy-duty tripod. The whale was loaded onto a truck and taken to the museum for research, ending a journey that started in a suburban backyard. At first glance, this looks like the entrance to something you are not supposed to find. A dark tunnel filled with water, rough stone walls closing in on both sides, and, at the very end, a red Torii gate standing silently in the shadows. Images like this spread quickly online because they feel out of place, as if someone built a shrine in a location that was never meant to be seen. But this is not a horror movie set or a cursed doorway. It is a real location in Japan, with a documented history that just happens to look unsettling today. This Torii gate stands inside an abandoned tunnel in Kani City, and it belongs to a small Shinto shrine known as Amagamin Ochobo Inari Shrine. In Shinto tradition, Torii gates mark the boundary between the everyday world and sacred space. Most people associate them with large outdoor shrines, but they can also be found along mountain paths, near caves, inside forests, and even underwater in lakes or coastal areas. The exact origins of Torii gates are still debated, with some historians suggesting influences from ancient Indian or Chinese ceremonial gates, while others believe they developed within Japan itself. In this case, the shrine was built inside a tunnel connected to caves in the area, which were used during World War II, likely for storage or shelter. After the war, the space was repurposed and became part of a small local shrine site. For many years, the tunnel shrine was used as part of a summer festival, with lanterns hung along the tunnel and people walking through the passage to visit the shrine. Over time, water began to collect inside the tunnel, flooding happened more often, and it became harder to take care of the site. By around 2016, festivals stopped, and the site was eventually left behind. Years later, urban explorers rediscovered the tunnel, and photographs of the shrine spread online, where people began calling it a portal, a curse, or a gateway to another world. When you think about a movie theater, you probably imagine a shopping mall with bright lights, people buying popcorn, and long lines at the counter. But that is not what the police found under Paris. In 2004, during a normal training exercise, French police were moving through the old stone tunnels beneath Paris, known as the catacombs. During the training, one group of officers noticed something strange. There was a dark opening in the wall that did not appear on any official map. Curious, the officers followed the tunnel deeper. The air became colder, the walls became rougher, and the silence felt heavier with every step. Then, without warning, the tunnel opened into something completely unexpected. A fully working movie theater built underground, carved directly into solid rock. There was a large movie screen, real projection equipment, and rows of chairs placed neatly in front of it. Electric cables ran cleanly through the stone walls, installed carefully by people who clearly knew what they were doing. Nearby, another room contained a bar, and beyond that was a small restaurant area that was stocked and ready to be used. The entire space covered about 400 square meters and could seat around 20 people. As the officers looked around, they noticed something else that made the situation even stranger: security cameras. The entrance was protected by surveillance equipment, and near one tunnel was a device that played loud barking dog sounds to scare people away. This was not a joke or a random setup, but something planned carefully. The police secured the area and left, planning to return with experts to learn who built it, how long it had been used, and how it stayed hidden under one of the most watched cities in the world. But 3 days later, when they returned to the underground chamber, everything was gone. The screen had disappeared, the chairs were removed, the bar was taken apart, and the wiring had been cut cleanly from the walls. Whoever built the cinema removed it quickly and quietly, without leaving any damage behind. On the ground, in the center of the room, the officers found a single note: "Do not try to find us." Later, investigators connected the secret cinema to an underground group known for repairing and protecting forgotten parts of Paris. No one was arrested or identified, and no suspects were ever officially named. Even today, no one knows how many other hidden rooms still exist beneath the streets of Paris. Want to see more videos like this? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any. The stepwells of Gujarat are some of the most unusual underground structures ever built. They are called stepwells, or valves and baileys, and they were designed to store water below ground. Most of them were built between the 7th and 19th centuries, mainly to collect rainwater during monsoon season and to make sure people had water during dry months. Instead of being simple wells, they were built with long staircases that go deep underground, allowing people to reach the water no matter how high or low the level was. Because they were underground, the air inside stayed much cooler than the heat above, which made them useful places to rest and gather. Over time, they became social spaces where travelers and locals could sit, talk, and escape the heat. The most famous example is Rani Ki Vav, also known as the Queen's Stepwell, built in the 11th century during the Solanki dynasty. It goes down more than 20 meters and stretches nearly 65 meters in length. Inside, it has 7 levels and more than 500 detailed carvings covering the walls and pillars. These carvings show Hindu gods, celestial figures, and repeating geometric designs. The level of detail is impressive, especially considering the structure was built mainly to store water. Many stepwells also included channels that guided rainwater into the well while reducing dirt and silt buildup. Over the centuries, changes in water systems and city growth caused many stepwells to fall out of use, some filled with sediment, while others were forgotten and buried underground. Rani Ki Vav itself was rediscovered in the 1940s after being covered by flood deposits for generations. The Adalaj stepwell, near Ahmedabad, features octagonal landings and a mix of design styles. Another example, Dada Harir Vav, combines Hindu and Islamic architectural elements in a single structure. Today, stepwells are studied not only for their beauty, but for their smart water management design. Modern engineers still look at them when discussing sustainable solutions for water shortages, and visitors are often surprised by how plain the entrances look compared to the detailed underground interiors. In 2014, a 14-year-old boy named Ali Erturk was digging a small trout pond behind his father's house in Salt Lake City. He had been working on the pond for a couple of weeks, enjoying the project, when his shovel suddenly hit something hard beneath the soil. At first, Ali thought it was just an animal bone, which did not seem unusual for a backyard. But as he cleared away more dirt and looked closely at what he had uncovered, he realized something was very wrong. The shape was not what you would expect from an animal bone. It was part of a human skull. That was the moment the digging stopped. Ali called his father over, and after seeing the bone, his father immediately contacted the police. Officers arrived and quickly decided that the discovery required expert attention, so archaeologists were brought in to examine the site. After carefully studying the remains, they confirmed that the bones belonged to a Native American man who had lived in the area about 1,000 years ago. Officials from the Utah Department of Heritage and Arts then removed the remains. They explained to the family that people have lived in that valley for as long as 10,000 years. which means discoveries like this, while rare, do happen. In fact, similar remains are found several times each year across the state of Utah. A forensic anthropologist was assigned to study the bones and learn more about who the person was. If the remains could be connected to a present-day Native American tribe, they would be returned and reburied according to that tribe's traditions. The Baghdad Battery sounds like something out of a superhero movie, but it's actually a small clay jar from ancient Mesopotamia that has confused people for decades. When archaeologists first uncovered artifacts like this in 1936 at a site called Kujut Rabu, they did not think much of them at all. At first glance, the object looked like nothing more than a simple storage pot, the kind you would expect to find almost anywhere in the ancient world. That assumption changed when they examined what was sealed inside. Each jar contained a copper cylinder, an iron rod placed down the center, and a thick layer of bitumen used to seal the parts in place. One well-known example stands about 15 centimeters tall, with a copper tube roughly 9 centimeters high and an iron rod that is heavily rusted, suggesting it was exposed to moisture or some kind of liquid. In the 1930s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm König, who was working with the Iraq Museum, suggested an unusual idea. He proposed that if the jar had been filled with something acidic, like vinegar or wine, the copper and iron could produce a small electrical charge. The concept itself is simple, because copper, iron, and acid can create electricity even today. That suggestion is where the nickname the Baghdad Battery came from, and the idea quickly gained attention. Some claimed the jars were used to electroplate gold or silver, while others imagined ancient priests shocking people during rituals or rulers using electricity to scare the public. There were even joke versions suggesting the jars were basically ancient power packs, as if Mesopotamians were charging giant Stone Age game consoles. Archaeologists, however, are far less impressed by the battery theory. There is no solid evidence of wires, electrical connections, or tools that would be needed to actually use electricity in a practical way. Researchers like St. John Simpson from the British Museum have also pointed out that the original excavation records were poorly documented, which makes firm conclusions difficult. What weakens the battery idea even more is that similar sealed jars found earlier were discovered holding rolled plant material, possibly papyrus, suggesting they were used to store scrolls or ritual items instead. Modern experiments have shown that replicas can generate electricity under controlled conditions, such as when Mythbusters linked multiple jars together in 2005 and produced a few volts. However, those tests rely on modern materials, clean connections, and deliberate setup choices that ancient people may never have used or intended. Because of all this, most experts agree on a middle ground. The artifacts themselves are real, but the idea that they were designed as batteries is likely a modern obsession rather than an ancient invention. To make matters even messier, the original artifact's current location is unclear after the chaos and looting that followed the 2003 invasion of Iraq. As a result, much of today's debate is based on old records, photographs, and replicas rather than the original object itself. MacLeod was planning to install solar panels in the backyard of his home in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. While getting the yard ready, he decided to check an old underground access vault that had once belonged to a hot tub that was no longer there. When he opened the hatch, he immediately noticed something strange. Sitting in the dark space below was a military green bag. Curious and confused, Reed climbed down into the vault to take a closer look. Inside the bag, he found jars, bundles, and vacuum-sealed packages packed tightly together. When he opened them, he realized they were all filled with marijuana and hash. Each container had labels with names like White Russian, Super Lemon Haze, and Bubble Mix. Altogether, there were about 20 pounds of drugs with an estimated street value of around $175,000. For a brief moment, Reed thought about what that kind of money could do for his struggling startup. That thought ended quickly when it became clear that whoever hid the drugs might come back for them. Realizing the danger, Reed stopped searching and called the Los Angeles Police Department. The dispatcher asked if he could bring the drugs to the police station himself. Reed made it clear that driving through Los Angeles with that much marijuana was not going to happen. Several hours later, a police sergeant arrived at the house to take control of the situation. She asked Reed if he ever posted vacation photos online, suggesting someone may have used the empty house while he was away. The drugs were then confiscated and removed from the property. To be safe, Reed taped a sign over the vault hatch stating that the police had taken everything inside. No one ever returned to claim the stash. In 1997, a man named Mel Waters called into a late-night radio show called Coast to Coast AM, which was known for strange stories. But Mel's story didn't stand out because he sounded excited, dramatic, or unstable. He sounded normal. Mel claimed he once owned property near Ellensburg, in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, and that on this land was a hole that did not behave like any hole should. According to Mel, the hole was about 9 feet wide and had been there long before he bought the property. He said neighbors used it as a dumping spot for trash, old appliances, and scrap metal, yet the hole never seemed to fill up. Curious, Mel decided to measure how deep it was using fishing line and weights. He claimed that even after lowering tens of thousands of feet of line into the hole, he never felt the weight hit bottom. If true, that would make the hole deeper than anything ever drilled by humans. Mel also said that animals behaved strangely around the hole, like dogs that refused to go near it, and neighbors even reported similar behavior from their pets. The most disturbing claim came from a neighbor who said he threw a dead dog into the hole, only to later see the same dog alive again, wearing the same collar, but acting strangely distant. Mel admitted he did not see this himself, but said the story convinced him something was very wrong. As more people became interested in the hole, Mel claimed that government officials eventually showed up and told him he could no longer access his property. He said he was pressured to leave the land and warned not to talk about the hole anymore. After that, Mel disappeared from the show for several years. When he eventually returned, his claims became far more extreme, and many listeners who had believed him at first began to doubt the story entirely. A vertical hole extending miles into the earth could not exist in that region or anywhere on Earth without collapsing due to heat, pressure, and geological movement. For comparison, the deepest hole ever drilled by humans is the Kola Super Deep Borehole, and even that reached only about 7.5 miles. No physical evidence of Mel's hole has ever been found. No photographs, no measurements, no location that can be confirmed. Despite this, the story refuses to die. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Let us know if there are any more mysterious things found underground that we forgot to mention. And as always, see you in the next one.